Welcome, dear friends, to Life Lessons from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we continue with the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Specifically, we will be discussing the 78th chapter. And this concerns the pilgrimage of Balaram and his punishing of Romaharsana Sutta, which leads to a bit of a quandary as well. Before I begin, I'll just chant some verses of invocation to create auspiciousness as well as wait for the arrival of our regular participants. Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 2. Sutta Uvacha Yam Prarvajantamanope Tamapeta Krityam Vaipayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Putreti tanmayataya taravo bhinerus tam sarvabhuta hridayam murinam anantosmi. Srila Sutta Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that great sage, Shukadev Goswami, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyas, leaving home without undergoing reformation by the sacred thread or the ceremonies observed by the higher castes, his father, Vyasadeva, feeling separation from him, cried out, 'O my son!' Indeed, only the trees which were absorbed in the same feelings of separation echoed in response to the bereaved father." Same chapter, Canto Chapter 2, Text 3. Yasvanubhavamakila shruti sharamekam adhyatmadipam atisattam tam adhyatmadipam atitir satam tamondam samsarinam karunahaya purana guhyam tam vyasasunam upayami guru muninam. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Shuka, the spiritual master of all sages, son of Vyasadeva, who, out of his great compassion for those grossly materialistic people who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of the material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge after having personally assimilated it by experience. We'll chant a few more verses. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 4. Narayanam namaskritya naram cheva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 17. Shridvatam svakata Krishna punyashravana kirtana hridyantasto yamadrani virudoti suhrit satam. Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, supersoul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. I'll chant one more verse. Text 18. Nastaprayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttamasloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Thank you all for being here. Grateful to have your association. We have joining us from New York City, Shri Gandharvika Nasi. My wife joining from work. Thank you so much for logging in. I'm grateful that you are able from your work environment. We have Gaurachandra joining us from New Zealand. Gaurachandra says, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam. Welcome, Gaurachandra ji. Shama Manjari joining from South Africa says, Jai Shri Ram, Shri Prahlad Prabhuji, and all devotees. Yesterday, here in the US, we celebrated Ram Navami, but I'm guessing devotees will be celebrating it around the world on different days. So possibly in South Africa, you're celebrating it today, which is where Shama Manjari is. Nikunja joining us from Auckland, New Zealand says, Hare Krishna Shri Prahlad Prabhu. Danika is here to welcome both of you. Thank you so much for joining. Grateful that Danika can join as well. Kirtina is joining us from Norway, sending gratitude. And on Instagram, we have been joined by Induleka 108 in Boston, Christopher, Crimes Organized, RL Tarun, Bhagavatam, who's a regular participant, and Dari Bovi. Thank you all for logging in. So we continue. Life lessons from Srimad Bhagavatam today, chapter 78 of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And we're discussing verses 17 through to 40. Our topic, Balarama punishes Romaharsana and harmonizes contradictions. In Poland, I learned to speak our teachings in a way that was both preaching but not preachy. That is, preaching without preaching as such. We were invited by mayors to conduct cultural festivals, and we had to be sensitive. And so the approach we developed was presenting rather than telling. It's a subtle art, a subtle difference, it takes maturity. And I guess it sounds contradictory as well. How do you preach without preaching? But it's just about balancing our language a little, being a bit sensitive. And so when we think about it in those terms, it's no contradiction at all. And we can apply this in many areas in life. You're an individual, but you're also a member of a collective. Both at the same time, no contradiction. You are a son or a daughter to your parents, but then you might also be parents yourselves to your own children. And so, yeah, Nikunja's here, both a daughter and a mother, both a child and a parent at the same time. We are disciples. We might also be teachers, or our spiritual masters are disciples and teachers. And so it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be A or B. If it's A, then it's not B. If it's B, then it's not A. What about if it's both? Both A and B at the same time. And so sometimes we are stuck. We're unable to deal with an apparent contradiction. And it's the same in spiritual philosophy. For some, God is an energy. For others, God is a person. Which is it? Each one is limiting in and of themselves. And Lord Chaitanya's philosophy is it's both at the same time. God is both all-pervasive energy as well as the Supreme Person. So today we are going to get some insight in resolving contradictions by discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 78, verses 1 through to 40. We're going to complete this chapter. Not 1 through to 40, sorry. 17 through to 40. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Three topics. One, Balaram's neutrality, verses 17 to 21. Humility as a sign of learning, verses 22 to 28. And finally, the sage's distress and Balaram's resolution, verses 29 to 40. Let's begin with our first topic, Balaram's neutrality. When Balaram heard that the Kurus were preparing for war with the Pandavas, he decided to go on a pilgrimage. And the reason, he didn't want to take sides. He knew each side would ask him to fight on their side, and he didn't want to do this. He didn't want to have to pick sides. And so he made a pretext of going to bathe in the holy places. Sukadeva Goswami tells us he bathed in Prabhash, which is by the sea, near to Dvaraka, regarded as a holy place. In fact, that's where Krishna and the Yadus finally left this world, Balaram as well, but that's later on. It was a place where he honored the demigods, the sages, forefathers, and then with a group of brahmanas, he went to the Saraswati that flows westward into the sea. Indeed, actually near to Prabhash, there is a river that's regarded as the Saraswati. He then went into the Himalayas. He visited Bindu Sarovara. He visited Brahmatirtha, Chakratirtha. He visited other places along the Yamuna River, the Ganges River. And finally, he came to Naimisharanya forest, where there were many great sages performing an elaborate sacrifice. And when the sages saw Balaram approaching their place of sacrifice, they were elated and they stood up to greet him. They bowed, they worshipped him and honored him. So we can pause here and just reflect briefly and focus specifically on Balaram's neutrality and his diplomacy rather than participating in the Kurukshetra war. Balaram embarked on a pilgrimage. And this shows his reluctance to take sides. Sanatana Goswami says also it's his way of bringing variety to Krishna's pastimes. But it shows us one other thing as well. And that is something that we see consistently in Balaram's pastimes and his service to Krishna. And that is taking the role of the peacemaker. We see this in earlier incidences that we have discussed together. If you remember when Krishna's son Samba kidnapped Lakshmana, the daughter of Duryodhana, from Hastinapura, and then the Kurus captured Samba and kept him a prisoner in Hastinapura. The Yadus were enraged once they heard that a Yadu prince was being held captive by the Kurus, and they wanted to march on Hastinapura and wage war and secure Samba's release. But Balaram, he pushed for a diplomatic solution. He wanted to avert a clash between the Kuru and Yadu dynasties. And so he led a contingency of senior elder members of the Yadu Dvaraka community, and he was able to find a peaceful resolution and secure Samba's release along with his bride Lakshmana without any fighting or bloodshed. In another instance, if you remember, when Krishna kidnapped Rukmini, then Krishna was pursued by Rukmi, the brother of Rukmini, and Krishna captured him. Rukmini pleaded, don't kill him, don't kill him. So Krishna was instead, he had him tied up and he was holding his sword. And then Balarama arrived and chastised Krishna for causing distress to Rukmini and mistreating Rukmi, who he said is now your brother-in-law. You have to treat him well. And so we see Balaram, he takes the role of the peacemaker. He went to Vrindavan as well to pacify the residents of Vrindavan. Here we see he's also taking this role. Doesn't want to take sides in this conflict, to participate in the Kurukshetra war. We can take hope from this description. It reminds us that even as souls who have chosen to enjoy separately from Krishna, there is a path of mercy embodied in Balaram. While Krishna may sometimes lean towards meting out judgment, giving the just rewards for activities, misdeeds performed, Balaram is more lenient, and as the Adi Guru, he represents the Vaishnava, or the devotee's perspective, as the supreme servitor personality of Godhead. He represents the role of the devotee, the best of servants, therefore the original spiritual master. But then, as in this mood, he can also sometimes appear to go against Krishna's will, intervening on behalf of the wayward souls and advocating for forgiveness rather than justice or punishment. And through Balaram's example, we learn the power of mercy and the importance of seeking reconciliation over retribution, guiding us to a more compassionate and forgiving approach for seeking mercy, but then also to represent that mercy as well and share our good fortune with others on behalf of Lord Baladev and our spiritual masters who represent Lord Baladev, the Adi Guru. Okay, let's continue then. Humility as a sign of learning, our second topic, verses 22 to 28 of this 78th chapter. Balaram has been well received by all the sages of Naimisharanya. His entourage, his Brahmana companions have also been well received and honored. And Balaram, he accepted a seat of high honor. But then he noticed Romaharsana, a disciple of Vyasadeva, who had been seated in the exalted position of the speaker of the Puranas in that assembly of sages, that he had remained seated. And Balaram became very angry with him, seeing how this sutta, a sutta is a reciter, how he had failed to stand up and to offer due respect to Lord Balaram, and how he was sitting above all the learned Brahmanas. Of course, they had invited him to take that seat, but that hadn't given him the right to not honor the Supreme Lord when he entered into their assembly. And so Balaram is displeased with this behavior. And he said, "This fool, born from an improperly mixed marriage, sits above these Brahmanas and above me, the protector of religion. And this arrogance must be punished." Although he is a disciple of Vyasadeva and has thoroughly learned all the scriptures from him, the Puranas and the Samhitas, all the study has not produced the quality of humility. He doesn't have the character. Rather, his study of the scripture has made him arrogant, and he doesn't have proper discipline, and he sees himself as above all others. He said, "My purpose and descent in this world is to punish such hypocrites and miscreants who misrepresent Dharma, misrepresent religion." And so, although Balaram, he had put down his weapons at this point, as Krishna put down his weapons after killing Salva and Dantavakra, and Balaram had similarly put down his weapons at this stage, but he wanted to punish Romaharsana. And so he took up a weapon of a blade of kusha grass. Oops. Sorry, we're going to have to reposition the camera here for our Instagram participants. Sorry about that. There we are. Ah. Okay, little minor disruption, but I think we're all good now. Hopefully that stays sturdy. So Balaram, he took up a blade of kusha grass and touching Romaharsana with the tip of the kusha grass, he released his soul from his body. That is, Romaharsana met with his demise. So we can pause here. We've just been speaking about Balaram and reconciliation and mercy and forgiveness. And here we see Balaram's reaction to Romaharsana is quite strong and severe. But the offense is also severe. Romaharsana is being held to a very high standard because he should know better. He has received great learning from Vyasadeva, but and he's taken the role of a teacher, of a guru, of others, of many Brahmana sages. But he doesn't respect the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so that's the offense. The offense is not that Balaram is feeling disrespected, but it's that this is a person in the role of guru who doesn't respect the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's where Balaram's intervention comes to play. And the false guru misleads the disciples. And so the punishment is severe that Balaram affords. We could reflect about the importance here of humility as an indicator of learning. It's not book knowledge. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna asks Krishna, what is knowledge? Krishna gives him a long list of character traits, the first of which is humility. So Balaram's anger underscores that true wisdom manifests as humility, not arrogance. And we're taught that while mercy is available, it demands humility and respect in return. Balaram's mercy is available, the Holy Name's mercy is available to us. But if we approach them with arrogance, then we get cut off from that flow of mercy. So true learning transforms into character, cultivating humility and respect, which are essential for spiritual development. Let's go to our third topic, the sage's distress. When Balaram killed Romaharsana, all the sages cried out, alas, alas. They were greatly distressed, and they told Lord Balaram, you have committed adharma. Sanatana Goswami, he says this means that Balaram is above dharma. So that's how our Acharya is explaining it. The sages, they said, we have given Romaharsana the seat of the spiritual master. We seated him on the Vyasasana, and we gave him a benediction, promising him Chiranjiva, a long life and freedom from physical pain. But you have killed this teacher. You have killed this Brahmana, Romaharsana Sutta. And of course, you're God. And even the injunctions of scripture can't dictate your behavior. You are free to act as you wish as the Supreme Lord. Nonetheless, we did make these promises to him, and you have killed an exalted person, a Brahmana, and it would be advisable if you would undertake some purification, even if just to set a good example for the benefit of others. So Balaram, he replied, he said, I will certainly atone for this killing because I wish to show compassion to all living beings, including by setting a good example. And therefore, he says, dear sages, you prescribe for me what I should do. Just give the word, and even if you want me to restore his everything you promised, his long life, his health, his physical vitality, I'll do it. And the sage says, no, 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 don't do that. Don't restore his life, because that's your prerogative. You're the Supreme Lord. By your will, with your power, you used a kushagrass weapon to kill Romaharsana, and that should remain as it is. It is your will. At the same time, we made this promise. We promised him a long life, so our words shouldn't go in vain either. So you please determine how properly to fulfill this. And so Balaram, he's put into a quandary, isn't it? The sages are saying, you must keep Brahmaharshana in his current position. You killed him, that should be as it is. That's your will. But then our words should not be made untrue. They should not be made false. So how to resolve a situation like this? Balaram has a solution, and he draws on Shastra to resolve this problem. A or B, or can it be A and B? So A, Brahmaharshana dies. B, the sage's blessing remains that he lives long. It would appear that A and B are incompatible, but Balaram will give a solution that allows for both to be correct at the same time. A can be B, B can be A at one at the same time. He says, the Vedas instruct that the Father lives on in the Son. Therefore, let Romaharshana's son become the speaker of the Puranas, and let him be endowed with a long life, strong senses, and stamina. And so the sages, they were happy. They were happy with this. Balaram asked, is there something else that you wish I should do to atone? And so the sages, they said, there is a demon who attacks our sacrifice regularly. His name is Malvala. He comes here every new moon day and contaminates the sacrifice. If you could kill this demon, we would be very grateful. The other thing you could do to set an example for others is to complete a 12-month sacrifice, a 12-month pilgrimage of the land of Bharata in a mood of meditation and bathing in the various pilgrimage sites. And if you complete that, then you'll show a nice example of purifying oneself after some kind of activity such as this. So in our next class, we will discuss these two things, Balaram's killing Balvala to protect the sacrifice and his ongoing pilgrimage over a 12-month period. For the time being, we can reflect on embracing harmony in contradictions through subtle intelligence. Balaram's response to this dilemma presented by the sages illustrates the art of harmonizing apparent paradoxes or contradictions by transferring the blessings of the sages to Romaharshana's son, Sutta Goswami, then drawing on Shastra as a support. He shows how we can seek to reconcile differences. Of course, the highest manifestation of this reconciliation or harmonization in our lives involves understanding this very subtle point, this nuanced interplay between Krishna's oneness and difference from his creation, his omnipotence within all living beings, alongside his transcendence of this material nature, and his existing separately in the spiritual sky in his original personal form. And so this is Lord Chaitanya's very subtle teaching, harmonizing contradictions, his achintya beda philosophy, simultaneous oneness and difference. Krishna is at once both everywhere and at the same time, he is a person as well. And by cultivating this wisdom, we can approach other situations, seeing Krishna's presence and non-presence in that sense, in all things and beings, his presence and yet his distinction from all things and beings, and enables us to develop a subtle intelligence and a harmony, a sensitivity by which we can approach the world with respect, and we can approach all beings with honor and humility. And it also can teach us to avoid rigid dogmatism as well, to be more subtle and harmonizing in our approach to life. So let's conclude with a prayer. Beloved Krishna, as Balaram walked the earth in neutrality, choosing pilgrimage over battle, teach us to tread the path of forgiveness and reconciliation. Let us learn from Balaram's divine example that even when souls stray into darkness, there is always a dawn in Baladev's mercy, offered through the agency of Guru and Vaishnavas, should we choose to seek it. Balaram teaches that receiving this mercy requires humility. As we grow in understanding of your glory, transform us from being tall, leafless trees that seek to overshadow into beings that bow low, enriched with the fruits of spiritual wisdom. Balaram demonstrated how to weave threads of wisdom to harmonize contradictions. Bless us to perceive the world and all beings within it through your divine play of oneness and difference, presence and transcendence. Simultaneously, help us to cultivate a personal, loving relationship with you, our beloved Krishna. Wonderful. Thank you all again for being here. Let me honor some of you who arrived as I started speaking. And in the meantime, if you have any questions or reflections, you can type those into the chat. We have Kirtina with us from Norway. Thank you for being here every time, Kirtina. We have Achutananda with us from the UK. Achutananda says, Haribol. We have Janaki with us from Hungary. Hare Krishna Sri Prahlad, says Janaki. We have Shamalaki joining us from here in the United States. Shamalaki says, Haribol Prabhu, thank you for your service and continuously showering your vast knowledge. Thank you, Shamalaki, for your encouragement and appreciation. On Instagram, we have with us Binal Patel, 83. We have Luciana Yuka. We have Digital Foundry, whom we have seen before in these classes. So thank you for joining. We have BD 108, Mary Manju 2021. Arpan is with us as well. We have Shubhan Khatri 6633, Dom Kotur, Maning Zardi, Adam Canelli 86, Frenchy Navy, Premuksen, Kamala Radha, and others. Thank you all for joining. So Kirtina has a question here. Unity in difference is only possible above the false ego. Yeah, thank you for that insight, for that reflection, Kirtina. Unity in difference, unity in diversity. So you're right, the false ego is an obstacle to our coming together. The false ego wants to focus on difference. The false ego wants to focus on how we are special, or sometimes when we're feeling harmed, or when we're feeling pain, then the false ego will focus on how we have been, maybe even how we are unworthy or worthless or useless or whatever other story we want to tell ourselves. The false ego can manifest in both of these ways because we are eternal spirit soul. So, of course, the soul is special, but um, seeking to distinction in terms of material possessions or recognition, that's one way the false ego manifests, wanting to distinguish ourselves, separate ourselves from others. And then the other is with these negative stories that we get caught up in and cause us lots of distress and anxiety, and we can wallow in that as well. So the manifestations of the false ego are diverse. The pure ego um, emphasizes that unity, seeing all things and beings as part and parcel of Krishna, and finds a harmony in that. Of course, there is also distinction or separateness within this unity. And so the pure ego is able to appreciate these things at the same time. Uh, we could go back, we could think of this back to those philosophical ideas as well. The false ego, even in spiritual practice, emphasizes difference. Our group over your group, or me and my guru and God, we're the best. And others, they're not worthy of respect or honor or appreciation or compassion or mercy. The Uttama Adhikari, free from false ego, has respect and honor and love for all living beings, seeing them as part and parcel of Krishna. So yeah, thank you for that reflection, Kirtina. Kirtina is also expressing appreciation for the class. Abhiyatma, joining us from Christchurch, New Zealand, says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, highly thought-provoking presentation. Thank you so much. Is Romaharsana's son Ugrashrava? Does his name have any significance? Good question, Ugrashrava. Ugrashrava, I understand, is another name for Sutta Goswami. But I understand Ugrashrava is Sutta Goswami. So I can't remember the literal meaning of that name, Ugra Shrava. Shrava, hearing, Ugra. We say Ugra Narasimha, so somehow terrified. But maybe this Ugra Shrava is capable of not terrified, but like staggering ability to hear. But that's speculation. We'll have to look that up. Yeah, thank you for asking, Abhiyatma Prabhu. And then Achutananda, he asks a question. Is simultaneous oneness and difference only inconceivable to conditioned souls and becomes conceivable upon liberation and enlightenment? Or is it always inconceivable even to great devotees? So Krishna definitely has an achintya shakti. He has an inconceivable potency that is bewildering even to great devotees. This achintya shakti facilitates his pastimes, various pastimes where his devotees are also covered to facilitate the lila. I'm thinking about even Baladev. He was not aware when Krishna expanded himself as all the cows and cowherd boys, when Brahma had kidnapped them and hidden them within a cave, even if for just a moment of his time, for 1 year. of earthly time. But Brahma, Balaram, he wasn't aware of this. He was able to surmise it after some time. Near to the end of that year, he saw how affectionate the cows were for their calves, and the cowherd men were for their sons. And he said, I've only seen this type of affection in relation to Krishna. And then he looked at Krishna and he said, Krishna, what's going on? What have you done? And Krishna said, yeah, well, I expanded myself, replicating or duplicating all these boys and calves because they had been stolen by Brahma. Balaram had been away on the day that they were stolen, preparing for his birthday, as I understand. So he'd been kept at home. So yeah, Achintya Shakti can bewilder even Baladev. And so yeah, as it facilitates Krishna's part, to your question, as it facilitates Krishna's pastimes, then Krishna's Achintya Shakti will be present and inconceivable. He'll do his activities will be inconceivable to the devotees. But is it only inconceivable to conditioned souls? Let us say, for the most part, conditioned souls are unable to conceive Krishna's oneness and difference. But we can understand it philosophically, even if we can't hold each idea in our mind at one and the same time. Philosophically, we can understand this idea and we can understand that idea. We can understand how Krishna is present everywhere, in all things and all beings. And then we can understand how he's a person as well, with his personal features and qualities and activities and associates. And so these two ideas, difficult or let's say impossible for us to hold them in our minds at the same moment, but we can vacillate between them. We can, like the pendulum swing, we can very quickly rotate between the two ideas and then hold them in our hearts at the same time. And we can understand this in logical terms, even though it defies logic. But let's say we could give an example of the particle and the wave in physics. There's the idea that matter is either a particle or a wave, depending on the observer. So when the matter is being observed, it can take either form. And who's to decide which form it will take? It's actually, it can't be observed as both at the same time. It can be perceived either as a particle or as a wave, but the potential for matter to be both is always present. So yeah, I'm not sure if that made that concept easier to understand or not, but it is a contemporary example that we can apply to this. Thank you for the question, Achutananda. Let me just go back a little bit more philosophically and just contrast other philosophical positions. So we have the monist position of Shankara, which sees everything as non-dual. So that is Advaita. Everything is one. All that exists is Brahman, and the materiality, and Brahman is spirit. So the materiality that we see, according to Shankara, is an illusion. Whatever matter we see that is lifeless, that doesn't have the qualities of Satchitananda as Brahman, it is an illusion. So that's not very satisfying. The position of Ramanujacharya, Vasishtha Advaita, it is a qualified monism. So Vashishtadvaita, everything is one, but within that oneness, there is distinction. Everything is Brahman, but within that Brahman, there is variety. And he gives the example of the parrot in the green tree. So you have a green tree, and it's one tree. But within that tree, you might also see some parrot. So one with some distinction as well. In the same way, everything is Narayana, everything is the Supreme Lord, but within the Lord, there is distinction. There is God, there is material nature, there are the living entities, Ishvara, Prakriti, and Jiva. Then you have Madhva's position, which is very emphatic on emphasizing duality or distinction. There is God and there is the living entity. They are not one. So his philosophy is Dvaita, Vedanta. Dvaita means dualism. He feels that Ramanujacharya has given too much ground to Shankara and leans towards some kind of impersonalism. So he really wants to emphasize the duality, the distinction between God and the living entity. And then Lord Chaitanya's position is Achintya Bhedabhed, inconceivable, simultaneous oneness and difference. Everything is at once God, material nature, the living entities, and God himself. They are all him. They are all his energy. They are all expanded from him. He is present throughout his creation as his energies, whether it's the living Brahman or whether it's the matter as well. It is all him. It is all his energies. And Bhagavatam gives so many descriptions like this, whether it's comparing the planetary systems to his feet and his waist, middle planet, Bhumandala, to his waist, and then the upper 7 planetary systems to his chest and his neck, and then his face, his up to the top of his head. So whether it's comparing that way, or whether it's saying that the sun is his eyes and the moon his mind, and the trees the body and his the hair on his body, and the clouds the hair on his head. So describing nature as his body, or describing the demigods as his different limbs as well, or the social body, Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras also as his great body, Virat Rupa. So that's one way the Bhagavatam describes God, present everywhere throughout his creation. But then we also get the personality of Godhead, Krishna, the cowherd boy, playing his flute. And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy, simultaneous, inconceivable oneness and difference. Everything is simultaneously God, Krishna, but then not God. We Jiva souls, we are part of God, and we are eternally parts and parcels. So we are his energy, but we are not the whole, as the Mayavadis would argue. And so simultaneous, inconceivable oneness and difference. It is a subtle philosophy and a most wonderful philosophy. Okay, so Shamalaki says, to preach today without ego, pointing negative problems in this Kali Yuga. How to preach without ego? Yeah, good question. You know what? We can't really preach without ego. We have to, because preaching, that is real preaching, it is an affair of the heart. The Vaishnava shares the love for Krishna that they carry in their heart with another soul. And that must be done with love and respect and compassion. What we do with ego is when we take our philosophy and we almost attack other people with our philosophy. Our ego makes them feel hurt and offended and put down. So Vasudeva, when he impregnated Devaki, Krishna was transferred from his heart to the heart of Devaki and then to her womb. And Prabhupada says that Vaishnava Diksha, it is the same process. Krishna in the heart of a devotee is conveyed or offered or shared with another's heart. And then bhakti is manifest there. So when ego gets in the way, then we are our preaching is not effective. It can even be a kind of abuse. We want to dominate another, we want to control another, we want to establish our power or our fame or reputation, and the soul misses out on receiving Krishna from us. So how to preach without ego? We go with humility. Pointing out the negative problems of Kali Yuga, that's fine. We do it with humility, with love and respect and compassion, as opposed to sometimes might come across as anger and a desire to be right and to show our knowledge and learning and power over another. So we must be careful of that. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, when with a lowly heart will I go to share the divine command? That's his prayer. Thank you, Shamalaki. Monica Sharma in Sydney says, Hare Krishna. Thank you for being here with us, Monica Sharma. Achutananda says, Achintya Shakti can bewilder even Balaram. Wow. I still don't understand, but thank you for explaining. It is very profound. Thank you, Achutananda, also for your humility there. We sometimes answer questions as if we fully understand something as well. We have some realization, some insight. It also comes from the question itself, some reflection, but we also can't claim to fully understand these things. It's a process of gradual deepening of understanding, but not fully understanding. So thank you. Thank you for that. Achutananda says, it seems like it can only be understood through metaphors. Metaphors are helpful. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he speaks of the Shakata Chandra Nyaya, that we use metaphors, we use Shakata, means Braj, Chandra, moon. So this is a logic, Shakata Chandra Nyaya. And it goes like this. If you look at the moon, you can't see it moving in the sky. But if you look at the moon, the full moon, through the branches of a tree, you can see movement. And so metaphors or analogies, they can be helpful for us to see a thing that we otherwise can't perceive or understand. Shakata Chandra Nyaya. But then we should also recognize that metaphors have their limitations as well. We are seeking to understand or describe, discuss transcendental subject matter, but our language is limited. Our cognitive capabilities are limited as conditioned souls. And so sometimes the language itself are just hints. We say the trees in the spiritual world, but really they're not trees. They are kalpariksha. We say the stones of the spiritual world, but they're not really stones. They are chintamani. So we have something called a stone, and the original chintamani might be called a stone, but actually the word stone does not capture what chintamani is or kalpariksha is or kamadenu. We say Krishna herds cows, but those cows are not cows. We know cows. We call them cows, and then what we have are the reflection of the original kamadenu or surabi. And so, yeah, our language is limited. Our ability to understand these things is limited. We never fully understand. We are given hints. And with these hints, we can pray and reflect more deeply. And then what happens is Krishna can give revelation. It's only by mercy that we understand. Therefore, Krishna, he says, shining jnana dipena bhasmata. To those devotees who serve me with love, I enter their hearts with the shining lamp of knowledge. We don't understand by our own power. Krishna enters the heart and gives the realization, gives the insight, gives the revelation. And so we understand as much as he wants to reveal to us. But we show our interest by discussing Bhagavatam. We get some purification, we get some starting point, but really it's service that invokes Krishna's mercy upon us, and then we receive revelation. And so, yeah, as a starting point, metaphors, they can be helpful, but they are far inadequate as well, and we need to recognize their limitations. Thanks, Achunananda. Joan with us from Moalabat says, Haribol. Thanks for being here, Joan. Shabalaki says, thank you. A lot of clarification. It's an honor. Thank you again for being here with us, Shabalaki. Gaurachandra says, thank you for the wonderful class. Prabhuji. Thanks, Gaurachandra. Thank you, everyone with us on Instagram as well. It's an honor to share with you. May you all deepen your taste for hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. May you all deepen your appreciation for Krishna in the form of his holy names. May you deepen your appreciation for Krishna as he comes to us in the form of Sri Vigraha, the deity. May you all deepen your appreciation for Krishna as he manifests as the holy Nam, or comes present to us as his places where he's served, temples, homes, and so on, where devotional service is performed. And may you deepen your love and respect for Vaishnavas and take advantage of every opportunity to cultivate relationships with Vaishnavas and serve Vaishnavas, for it is by their mercy that we come to appreciate other practices of bhakti. And through this process, may you experience a softening of your heart, an overflooding of compassion that compels you to share the treasures of bhakti with others. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Vol.